Over the last 30 years, my research has been dedicated to understanding the lives of people condemned to live in very poor, segregated, inner-city neighborhoods. These are areas avoided by the general population, and consequently, the people there tend to be invisible. My most recent book, Righteous Dope Fiend, is the product of 12 years of field research, during which we befriended a group of homeless heroin injectors. We hung out with them, listened and talked to them, observed how they lived, and sometimes slept in their encampments. The addict's primary concern, their life's work, so to speak, is to avoid dope sickness, the bone-crushing pain of heroin withdrawal symptoms. Every day, within an hour or two of waking up, they have to find heroin. One of the first things we discovered is that they had formed a stable community. They live together for safety, but they also have a moral economy of reciprocal heroin sharing. To build a kind of minimal security against the onset of withdrawal symptoms, they cultivate obligations of gift-giving. Those unable to score heroin at any given time can expect what's called a cotton shot from the others in the group. When preparing a shot of heroin, the addicts often cook it in the concave bottom of a crushed beer can and then filter the liquefied drug through a cotton ball. The little piece of cotton becomes valuable. It's filthy because it's been in a dirty cooker that's been used by who knows how many people and heated in water that comes from who knows where and drawn into a syringe that's been used who knows how many times before. But that filthy cotton also holds a residue of heroin, and it becomes the, quote, generous gift they give to one another. It's not surprising that such unsanitary practices should spread diseases like HIV and hepatitis C. But we found that most of the addicts come to emergency rooms to be treated for abscesses, large, painful, soft tissue infections that develop on their bodies at injection sites. Outreach programs often give the addicts information about how to avoid infecting themselves. But much of that advice and knowledge is not practical because they need to remain in the moral community of gift-giving and reciprocal exchange. The main public service that drug users are dealing with turns out to be not healthcare, but rather law enforcement. The war on drugs over the past 20 years has led to massive arrests of homeless addicts and a 4- to 5-fold increase of the American prison population. This punitive approach has had the unintended effect of forcing the heroin injectors to maintain unsanitary practices because they must constantly hide from the police. In our view, the most successful treatments are harm reduction programs. These approaches don't judge the addicts morally, but first try to minimize the damage the addicts do to themselves by providing services like clean syringes or good food or access to health care and housing. Treating drug addicts as social pariahs is not only cruel, it's costly, because they're suffering tremendously, and society suffers from their petty crime and the violence associated with their drug use, not to mention the high cost of law enforcement, imprisonment, and emergency room services. We believe there needs to be a shift of public investment from police repression to health and housing services and employment training. Once the addicts are placed in subsidized housing, various networks of treatment and counseling and vocational education can start to address the deeper problems that led them to addiction. Our book, Righteous Dope Fiend, includes many photographs depicting the daily lives of homeless heroin addicts. The photos are woven together with field notes, excerpts from interviews, theoretical analysis, and other explanatory text. Our hope is that the photos and the writing together will help readers to better understand how people become trapped in segregated neighborhoods of poverty and empathize with the pain and hardship of their lives. The goal of our photoethnography is to make this suffering visible, to allow outsiders to see a taboo world that gets swept under the rug, or, over the last 20 years, swept into prison.